Hi guys, Aaron Niemeyer here from Epro 360, and in today's video I hope to explain all of the ins and outs of the state of Minnesota and just explore what makes this state a great destination, if you ask me, if you are considering of studying in the United States. So let's get to it. Let's check out what makes Minnesota a worthy state for your international studies. Now, before we get to it, let's check out some cool facts about this state to just give you some perspective on where you are within the United States. So, geographically speaking, it is located in the Midwest, in the northern central location of the US. It borders Canada on one side and the Great Lakes on the northeastern side of Minnesota. And that's important because, one of the names that Minnesota has is the 10,000 lake state. And that's actually incorrect. There are more than 10,000 lakes in the state of Minnesota, specifically roughly 11,860 separate lakes in just one state. So definitely a lot of water, and water will play a huge part of this state's economy, as we will see later on. But if you want to continue talking about water, you do have the only state in the United States that water is only flowing out of this state. There is no water entry into the state of Minnesota. Their own lakes will feed water that reaches three different places: the Gulf of Mexico in the southern area, Hudson Bay in Pennsylvania, Delaware area, and the Arctic Ocean further north in Canada. So that basically shows you how relevant water is. In fact, there are more than 6,500 different streams in the state of Minnesota. And if you put those streams together, you could basically circle the earth 2.5 times with all of the streams located in the state. So those are just some fun facts about how present water and the idea of water, right, is in the state of Minnesota. And in fact, the name Minnesota also comes from the Indian tribes, and the definition of Minnesota in their language meant murky water or blue water skies, and it just references the presence of such a vast amount of water in the state of Minnesota. Now, if we wanted to continue with some fun facts around the presence of water and the effects it had, historically speaking, in Minnesota, it's easy to see that, canoeing, for example, is a huge sport, is a huge outdoor activity practiced in the state of Minnesota. So much so that Border Waters Canoe Area is one of the most protected areas in Minnesota because it is the top destination for canoeing and canoe practice throughout the summer season. Not only that, but if you look at hockey, for example, because of those frozen lakes, hockey is a huge part of Minnesota tradition and the outdoor activity, for example, in winter season. And that's why Minnesota has been named one of the top producers of elite hockey players in the American history when it connects to hockey. Now, to give you some other facts outside of the idea of water, just know that Minnesota stands as ranked number 4th when it comes to life expectancy. It comes behind Hawaii, California, and New York. But that just goes to show how well you can have your life set up thanks to the economic steadiness of the state, but also all the different activities you can do. For example, there are 25 national landscape heritage sites to go visit. For example, Split Rock Lighthouse, which was featured in several films, and it is one of the most named the most beautiful lighthouse in the United States, among many other national parks and different outings that you can definitely plan and do in the state of Minnesota. When it comes to the artistic side of things, Minnesota also shines. Bob Dylan and Prince were from Minnesota, for example. Scott Fitzgerald, the writer, was also born and raised in Minnesota. And you have one of the most, state-renowned contemporary arts galleries in the United States located in Minnesota as well. So overall, you have a great musical presence, artistic presence, and a great artistic scene overall that will definitely, meet the expectations of any enthusiast when it comes to the art world. Now, before we start to unpack all the different universities that might be great fits for you in the state of Minnesota. Let's analyze first the economy of this state to just give you a perspective, a great insight of what these universities are looking to produce to feed the economic beast of Minnesota. And I just have to start by saying, for example, that 48.8% of the Minnesotans located and living in the state borders are actually college level employees. So that just shows that Minnesota has a very strong wealth of collegiate graduates to pull from when they're looking for employability and employment opportunities. But aside from that, it's also giving 2% to the nation of all small businesses. And I think that's a very cool fact to keep in mind, that Minnesota does, in fact, have a strong presence when it comes to small businesses. Many times when you look and analyze different numbers, when you look at these states, you're going to notice that the state might be influenced heavily by one big company or one big sector, for example, that has this huge pull. That's not really happening in Minnesota. I have to add to this that yes, 16 of all Fortune 500 companies are located in Minnesota. That is the highest amount by any state. For example, California and New York have less or a fewer amount of Fortune 500 companies. But added to that, if you have that wealth of small businesses and tax benefits and rewards for small businesses such as Minnesota has, it gives you a very steady, strong, and varied economy, which is surprising, and it's great to see that Minnesota has that implementation, and it just doesn't reward bigger, larger companies that employ thousands of employees, but rather focuses on the creation of small businesses. So for example, if you're thinking of creating your own business, if you have that entrepreneurial mindset, Minnesota definitely will welcome you, and it has great programs to help any, not only international students, but also US citizens get started and get their companies set up in the state of Minnesota. Now, this desire to grow and this desire to focus on small businesses or successes is definitely not new to Minnesota. In fact, there's a long-standing tradition of excellence when it comes to the economy in Minnesota. For example, IBM's facility in Rochester has been credited several times with the creation of different supercomputers that it has created in the state of Minnesota. Similarly speaking, the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota as well is a $15 billion medical center that has continuously grown and done a lot of great research on different processes and different medical implementations. Also coming from the University of Minnesota, which, for example, was credited for the first open heart surgery back in the 1950s. So that just goes to show that it has a very well diversified economy, and it strives to keep that diversification alive and well. And it also pulls from different sectors. For example, the agricultural and the mining sectors still play a big part since it is a huge importer and exporter in the US and the north central part of the United States. So it's no surprise that after showing you all of these details and many more that I could reference, Minnesota stands as ranked number third when it comes to economic opportunity in the United States. Now, to keep that economic power that it still has and has been growing over the last decade or so, it does need a wealth of candidates when it comes to employees to fill the different job positions and the openings coming up. So that's why it has great tax benefits for any citizen that is coming from another state, for example, but it also has great benefits for residents that already live in Minnesota that want to pursue an education at their different institutions. So it's no surprise, for example, that a lot of Minnesotans decide to stay within the state limits to pursue their education. On top of that, the cost of life in Minnesota is fantastic. It is well below the national average, and the cost of attendance of a university, for example, also falls below the national average. House prices on the other hand, even though it has a very strong economy, are well below other similarly ranked states like California, New York, or Florida at a much lower, much more affordable cost of purchase. On top of that, there are some tax benefits when you do purchase a new home in Minnesota. So all the different reasons to stay within the state limits. So in order for that to happen, they do need a wealth of institutions that provide great education to these future students that would like to stay within the state limits, or international students such as yourself that are looking at a wealthy state to study in. And that's no surprise to have that wealth of institutions located all in the state of Minnesota. You have, for example, in the area, the Twin City area, the meshing of the metropolitan area of both Minneapolis and St. Paul. You have University of Minnesota Twin Cities, for example. You have the Carleton College. You have St. Cloud State University in the city of St. Cloud. You have Bemidji State University. You have a wealth of state publicly funded and also privately funded colleges and universities that total roughly 200 different university and college institutions to pursue your higher education. Some of these programs that are very well known within the state of Minnesota and similar to what I referenced earlier could be business, medicine, law, any type of engineering program, supply chain management, a very big program in the state of Minnesota, agriculture or agribusiness, a big key player. But on the side, since I also mentioned that it has a very active artistic scene, you can find a great wealth of artistic programs, anywhere from painting, photography, the arts in general, the culinary arts as well play a big factor in the everyday life of Minnesotans. You can also have great film production programs or acting programs on that side if you're interested in theater as well. So as you can see, you have a great mix of different programs that do meet the demand of the economy and the economic struggles that Minnesota might have to meet that demand that they have. So overall, you have a great list of institutions with wonderful programs and also very well ranked. Keep in mind that a lot of the state, Minnesota State universities, it's ranked one of the highest state schools in the country. Carleton College, for example, is ranked 8th as one of the best private colleges in the US. And overall, the specific programs of each college have outstanding ranking with their specialty in mind. So keep that in mind when you're looking at programs, that Minnesota has that wealth of programs to supply any interest that you might have. Now, to wrap this video up, I just have to say that geographically speaking, it does have 4 seasons. It does have harsh, cold winters, but also quite hot and humid summers. So you're going to have the full experience regardless of where you are within the state. You're not going to have a wealth of mountain views, for example. That landscape is just not happening in Minnesota, but you do have a great list of opportunities when it comes to the outdoors. Hiking trails, biking, canoeing, fishing, fly fishing, any type of even rapid whitewater rafting or rapid rafting. All of those are definitely options that you can pursue in the state of Minnesota because you do have a lot of different outdoor activities that people just love to do. They love to live in the outdoors. When it is colder, you do have a lot of indoor activities, like I mentioned, the arts, the theater, sports events, for example, with ice hockey. You also have the biggest mall in America located in the state of Minnesota. So overall, you're never going to be bored. And Minnesotans, I might add, are also very open, welcoming, and friendly because they know and they understand that they are a community that needs to thrive together. So if you like any of that, those perspectives when it comes to education blended with the social side of things, Minnesota might be a fantastic opportunity at a much lower cost than comparable states within the US. Upon completion, when you do finish your program, the employability rates are phenomenal. Even the unemployment rate of the state is below the national average. So all in all, I think you have a wonderful state with great programs and great institutions offering wonderful programs for your education and your future prosperity. Now, before you go, please don't forget to read the description in the section below. In that description, you're going to find a link that will take you to a form that will give you a free consultation with an Epro 360 member. On that free consultation, we can openly discuss the opportunity of studying in the US, what might be needed, what you can do to improve your chances, anything that's on your mind on how to get to the United States and study. If you've liked this content and you want to see more of it, then please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and that way you'll get notified the moment we create more content of more states. Until then, thank you very much.